you're in the right place if you're learning about Adobe XD and how to build websites and apps in a matter of minutes. So let me share my screen with you guys. Here we go. Okay, so I'm Elise. I'm an Adobe XD instructor, but I also teach UX design at General Assembly as well as mentor at Springboard. I'm also a freelance UX designer working for a nonprofit, LA Family Housing right now. I also create content on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, fun and goofy educational content around UX. So let's begin. I'm going to start with what is UX? Some of you may be coming in and have never heard that term, or maybe you've heard it through some other people, but you're not quite sure what it is. So how I define UX is I actually like to begin with starting with bad UX. So have you guys ever had a frustrating experience offline? And you guys can talk about it in the chat, some offline frustrating experiences. So here's an example with an elevator, like which button do I press? This really seems all wonky and out of order. Or maybe at this left-hand side, it's this door, it says pull, but what do you pull? There's no handle to pull, right? So that could be a little frustrating. And then we can start thinking about bad experiences online. So perhaps you created a password and there's just so many things you have to think about, so many requirements to that password. And then you have to type that long, crazy password twice. Or maybe you are checking out, you're wanting to purchase something, and it's this long, extensive flow where you see all these fields that you have to enter, and you're like, I don't have time for it. It's frustrating. I'm just gonna like do this later, and you exit out. So maybe you guys can add some frustrating recent online experiences that you've had. I'm sure there's quite a few. So who is affected by bad user experience? So think about it, it's you guys, right? It's us, the users, but it's also the businesses. So let's say you do exit out, you don't purchase something, you don't complete that order. Well, that means that a business could be losing out on thousands, if not millions of dollars. So we have UX to the rescue. User experience designers are thinking simultaneously about the end user or the person who's going to be using the product, as well as the business and what their goals are as well. So that's why it's become such a popular job right now, and why so many businesses are looking to bring in UX designers to be that liaison. So UX isn't just about how it looks. This is typically what people think. Oh, a UX designer, you're just like a glorified web designer. You just have a new name for web design. And it's not, because UI is called user interface. So that is the presentation, the interactivity, the website or the app, the physical, like what you actually see in the screen. But UX is actually how the user engages with the product. How do they feel? Why are they frustrated, or why are they having such a delightful experience? Really wanting to understand what's going on there. So let's talk about the UX process a little bit. What does that look like? How do we involve users? So in the very beginning, we begin with research. We honestly just begin with talking to people, going out, watching and observing people, seeing how they use products, what frustrates them, and really understanding how that person is feeling. And then we begin with ideation. So solutions. What are all the design solutions we can think about that could solve this problem? Then we start going into the design phase, and then we prototype our designs. And then we test out our designs and we refine them. And this is all before going into development. We're just showing what the design could actually look like, an example of what it can look like. And we put it in the hands of users and watch them, test with them, and improve upon the product again before we get into any development. because it's much more costly to develop something and then go back and change things and remove things than it is to just do all of that up front with just static screens, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. Okay. So what is a wireframe? This is where we begin our design process. We're going to start with wireframes. You may have seen them before. They're grayscale, black, gray, white. And what these are, this is the foundation of our app. It's just the basic architecture of our screens. And we're not focusing on any colors or imagery or anything like that. It's just the basic foundation. And we want to feel really good about what that is like, understanding all the features and functionality before we start making it look pretty. So then we'll go into high fidelity. That is when we're adding the logo, the final typeface we want to use, images, icons, making it look like what it's going to look like when we launch it, the final design. Some people will compare it to like building a home, where you think of the building of the home as the UX, mapping it out, making sure that's solid and good before we think about putting the UI, which we can compare to interior design, painting it, landscape, making it beautiful, those final touches. So today, what we're going to be focusing on is how you can design wireframes and high fidelity, as well as prototype in Adobe XD. And we'll also talk a little bit about testing as well. Now, XD is free and available for their starter plan. If you have not downloaded it before, Jason, if you don't mind putting in the link to where people can download it. And what I'm going to suggest is don't worry about, opening up the app or anything right now today. What I'm going to highly recommend is for you just to watch today, and then we recorded this session, so you will have access to it, and rewatch it later when you have time to actually get into the tool. You can watch me play it, then pause it and go into your tool and try to recreate what I'm doing and kind of go back and forth that way. That's going to be how I recommend how you can fully utilize today's session. All right, so I'm going to show you a little prototype of what something could actually look like in XD when you think about when we really include all of XD's key features like animation and whatnot. So I'm going to show you what that's like. So first, we're seeing if you can see this little screen here. There was a timed animation. I didn't touch anything. It just moved on its own. And then here you're going to see a little animation in the center here, this little movement. I have this drag feature. You're seeing the colors change too in the call to actions below. Then we're seeing some more animation here. This is states, so I can turn on and off buttons. Here's some more animation. Then I have this overlay, and I'm going to use voice or voice interaction. Joshua Tree. Nope. Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree. Sometimes there is actually, oh, there we go. Sometimes there's a challenge when I'm using my my earbuds instead of my computer audio. But so there it goes. So that's kind of how it can look and feel like. It feels like a real app, right? So that's what we try to get our design to where that's where we want it to be, so that when we start testing it in front of users, they can be like, oh, they can really get a feel for what that design is without any coding involved. And then again, we can start iterating upon it, improving upon it, feeling like, wow, this is now at a really good place before we move on to the development stage. So let's talk about this interface a little bit. So when you open up a new project in Adobe XD, you're going to first see this big gray space in here. And this is what we call your paste board. And this is where all your designs are going to live. On the left-hand side is the toolbar. So you first are going to see this little select Option, and the shortcut is V. So that's how I get to select mode, is there. Underneath that is rectangle. I can make a shape. So if I select that, I can make a rectangle. After that is the ellipse, basically circles. There we go. And then you have shapes, polygons, and then underneath that is lines. Make simple line. And then I'm just going to show right under, I'm going to skip the next one and then go to T for text. This is another really important one. If you want to just put in some text, there you go. Type in some stuff. It's so small. There's my text. And then finally, the last one I'm going to show you here is artboard. So if I select artboard, you're going to see on the right-hand side that the menu has showed all these options for artboard sizes. So they're saying, do you want to design for a mobile device or a tablet or desktop or social media? So if I select desktop option here, this is my artboard, and this is where I'm going to be doing all of my designs. So this is an important key piece. When you want to start designing, don't just start designing rectangles in the abyss. This is a common thing I see. Make sure it's on an artboard, because if you do not, you won't be able to prototype. Okay. So the reason why this toolbar is so lean, and all I'm showing you is rectangles, circles, lines, and text, is because you will notice if you look at a lot of websites and apps, that's really all it is. You see a square here, a line, text, rectangle, circle, rectangle, rectangle, line, text, right? It's really quite repetitive. So that's why the toolbar is so lean in XD. Now, underneath this toolbar, at the very bottom here, you're going to see this little binoculars, and then there's like these little rectangles here. The first one at the very top is called your assets panel. And this is where you're going to have all of the colors and character styles and components you're going to use. And if some things I say you're confused by, don't worry about it. You can always look it up later, and it's not going to be dire to you getting started. Underneath that is your layers panel. So if I select a particular layer in this artboard, I'm going to see it here in my layers panel. So everything on this artboard is right here, all those layers. And then underneath that is plugins. Now I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but I want to talk about this right-hand menu. You may have noticed that when I am selecting different layers, the right-hand menu, which is called your property inspector, is changing depending on what I select. So this is the most important piece, important menu that you're going to be working with. If I select text, everything I can do with this text, I'm going to be able to do right here on the right-hand side. I can change the color, I can change the font, I can do everything here. So just remember that anytime you select anything, it's this, you're going to find the editing capabilities right here. So you won't get so lost. All right. Final thing I'm going to show you in this tour is we are in design mode. And then next to it over here on this corner, this left-hand corner, it says there's a little home button, design. That's how we know we're in design mode. And then I can go into prototype mode to start building a prototype. And then I'm going to go into share mode to start sharing and collaborating with other people. And we'll talk about this a little more later. All right, so that's the basic of basic tours of the platform. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit more about plugins, because today's session is more geared towards people who want to move quickly and, again, build those websites really fast. And one of the ways to do that is using UI kits. These are designs that somebody else has made and is just sharing with the world and saying, go ahead and use it. And you are going to be manipulating it so that it meets what you have in your mind for your own product. So you don't have to do everything from scratch. So Adobe has created this plugin, and how you are going to download it is over here on the upper left-hand corner. It has the menu option plugins. From there, I'm going to go to discover plugins, and I'm searching for quick mockup. Okay, once I find it, you're just going to hit the install button. I've already installed it, so I don't need to do it, but you'll just click install. Okay. The other plugin that I want you guys to download before you get started, and one that I'm going to share with you today, is free stock search. So I had installed that already as well. So those are two that I'm going to highly recommend to download. Okay, once I've downloaded those plugins, I can now find my plugins where? Where do you think? Think about it in your head. It's back down here on the left-hand side menu, all the way at the bottom with those little binoculars. I talked about it for just a second earlier. This is where you're going to find all of your plugins. Now, obviously, I have a lot. Some of you may be wondering, what is a plugin? So a plugin is something in addition to what the XD tool offers. So there's a lot of capabilities with XD, but there can be all these nuances of more capabilities. And the Adobe team has created plugins, as well as other teams have created plugins, so that you could even do more with this tool. So those are two plugins that you guys will be downloading and getting started with. So let's get into the next phase, which is going to be wireframing. All right, so we talked a little bit about wireframes. And how I'm going to get started with this plugin is first I'm going to go into it. So quick mockup. Sorry, yours is probably going to look something more like this. And to create my wireframe, I'm going to select the minimal one. So it's called minimal, not wireframe, so don't get confused. So I'm picking my theme, which is minimal. And from here, I have two options for how I want to utilize this plugin. I can either A, create an artboard, and I'm going to use the shortcut, which is so easy to remember. It's A. So if I click A, I can create an artboard. I'm just going to select this web design artboard here. I'm just going to move it away from my face. And then I can grab these elements. Let's say I want to have some typography. I can have that selected there. Now you're going to see something interesting. When I select a particular element here from the plugins, you're seeing that this menu also changes. Now, don't worry about it right now. We're going to go deeper into it later, but you might have noticed that. So you're just going to have to go use this little back button at the top to go back into my elements screen here. Then let's say I want to add a image. Okay. So I can start building out a wireframe like this using the different little elements inside here to build out my page. Now, this can be kind of a little bit of the longer experience. And so something that I recommend to do is instead of just going into the elements, you're going to go into the next door neighbor right here next to elements, this little menu option to templates. Now from templates, right underneath, you're seeing a little desktop blue highlight option. That's all of my desktop templates. And then I can go to mobile right next to it, and then I can see all my mobile templates. So let's say I want to have like a little home page. So I'm just going to select this classic home page, and it takes a little while for it to load. So it's like reading all the things. Oh, we're building it out for you. Here you go. I'm going to drag this on over. So now I see there's this whole home page that's already created for me. I can take this homepage, and I think I want to add also an about as well. And then I'm going to add a third page, which is going to be the contact page. Okay. So, oh, I think I picked blog instead. Oopsie, contact. Here we go. Get rid of blog. All right, so here are my 3 pages I'm going to work off of. And what I'm going to just drag these over next to my home page. Okay, so here are my 3 artboards I'm going to work with. And you might be thinking, okay, well, this doesn't exactly look like what I had in mind for in my vision. But we did remember earlier that everything is squares and lines and circles, and buttons are kind of fairly similar from one to the next. And a lot of websites are fairly similar. Most of them have some sort of navigation, a fairly large header section at the very top. And instead of having to worry about thinking, what is a good heading size font, which is 56 here, is this a good heading? Instead of having to think about it, it already has these kind of pre-thought out for you. So you can manipulate this design to what fits best for your idea. So I can think about, okay, I don't actually have a video, so I wouldn't want this video section, but I want to actually move this over here on the left. I'm going to get rid of that, this little button here, and literally you're just selecting and deleting, okay? And I want to add an image. So if I want to start adding things, I want to add an element, I'm going to go where? Back here, and instead of going to templates, I'm going to move back to elements. And then I'm going to add an image and just drag the little side to make it larger. Okay, so now this is my new section. And then I decide, oh, I don't have a newsletter. I'm just going to grab this section and delete it. I'm going to take this section and move it up. And you can also start to manipulate the text. Now, one thing you're going to notice is I selected here, I wanted to select this text, but I'm typing and nothing is happening. It's because you need to go to that particular layer. This is going to be my second thing that I'm going to be like really a highlight for you guys. This is a point of frustration for a lot of new designers. Is you need to get to that particular layer. You're just going to double click to get into that particular layer. Once I see that this is highlighted, this is blue, now I know I can interact with it. And I can make some changes. You know, this is another heading. I can start to change out the text and whatnot. Move this up, move that up. Right, okay, so just double clicking to get deeper and deeper, deeper into that particular group, and to get to that layer. Okay, some of this might be still like, woo, don't worry, you're watching right now. Once you start interacting with it yourself, it may start to make more sense for you. Okay, so I started maybe to make some adjustments to my wireframes. One thing I'm noticing right here is this navigation is different than this navigation. This one has a login screen or login button, and this one doesn't. So I want to keep my navigation consistent. I'm going to just delete that button. I just double clicked to get into that layer. And then I need to add this search. So I'm double clicking to get into that search. I'm copying it, going to this artboard, and I'm going to actually select the artboard name. It says about, and then I'm going to paste it. Otherwise, it doesn't know where you would want to paste. You need to make sure that artboard is selected. Now these match. Okay. Now, obviously, when you are spending the time on your wireframe, you're going to adjust this as much as you want to your heart's desire to fit what your product idea is or your website idea, whatever it is. You're going to manipulate this. Now, I'm going to show you the next part, which is the coolest part. So they've also, in this plugin, have thought about some of the visual designs, right? The high fidelity part, what that could look like. And instead, again, of having to think, what color should I use? I don't know what even style to do. How do I even begin thinking about visual design? What they have now is these themes that you can use to just easily change it out from a wireframe to high fidelity. How you do that is you're going to just simply select the artboard. Again, you're just going over to this little corner and making sure the artboard name is selected, and you're going to see that little blue highlight around the whole artboard. Now, if you noticed over here on the left-hand side, this is themes just got enabled here, this button. If I don't have an artboard selected, there is no themes enabled. Another thing to note, if you're like, wait, how do I get to this? You need to make sure the artboard is selected. So I'm going into themes, and now, if you remember, this minimal one was the one I originally started with. You can change out the themes at any point. So I'm going to say for this one, I want to begin with this theme. And this is what we're talking about, creating a website in the matter of minutes. You can go from wireframes to high fidelity so fast. Then let's say, okay, I don't really love that one. I want to try this like all dark one. So now that all changed there. Or you want to try out this Kyoto one here. Okay, that looks cool. I'm going to go with this one. And then you can just select the other artboards. I'm just going to hold Shift to be able to select multiple artboards. Then I'm going to go to the theme and I'm going to select Kyoto. And you're just seeing that kind of take over now. So they all have the same theme here.
Hey, Elise.
Yes.
If you modify the wireframe, the minimal one, and you customize it, what happens when you change themes? Does it abide by all your changes?
So if you recall, like in the wireframe, I made a couple adjustments, right? I moved this text over to the left-hand side and I added an image from the elements. So that whatever that was originally on there, you see that it moved over as well. It adjusted to the wireframe. But the image, there's no image that's put in there. You have to select that image. I deleted some things, that's gone. If you added any text, or let's say I did right here, this is another heading, right? I changed that, now that's reflected here. So it should reflect your, the theme as well. But I wanna make sure that I emphasize the fact that when I'm adding any elements to this screen, I was adding it from this elements option here, right? So I added the image from over there. You can add text, etc. from over here. That's what's going to reflect. If you add your own, circle design with some stuff, it's just going to remain as it was. If you put a gray circle in there, if I was like wanting something like this inside the design, it's just going to remain that way. It's not going to reflect any of this new visual UI, any of the colors and stuff in here. That's a great question.
It's pretty amazing, though, that you can switch themes and it keeps all of your changes. It's pretty good.
I know, it's incredible. When I first did, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna save me so much time. Yeah, so from here, the other question you might be having now at this point is, well, I don't really care for these colors. Like, I like the feeling, but maybe I want to adjust the colors a little bit, make them more my own and not just look like this template, perhaps. So this is when you can start manipulating the design a little bit. And I'm going to start with talking about photography. So let's say you have a totally different idea. You don't like these photos that they put in and you want to change them out. There's a few ways to do that. Now, the first is to literally, like, I'm going to go on to Google and look up home furniture. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at in a second. I'm just going to images, and you can take any image from like a website, or you can take it from something you've downloaded or something like that. And you can literally just like drag it in there and I'm going to say this is to any shape you can create. You can drag in an image to a circle, any sort of diamond, whatever sort of shape you want. If you drag in it, it's going to be replaced with that image. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is the one that is why I actually asked you guys to download a different plugin, which is the free stock search. So I downloaded a random image from Google. And first of all, it's pixelated, right? It's kind of blurry, doesn't look so good. We want to avoid that as much as possible. And the other thing is that this is copyrighted. Now, if this is for your own personal page, don't even worry about it. You're just trying to like practice, doesn't matter, right? But if you're going to actually build and deploy something, you want to make sure that all of your images are copyright free. So that's why we look for stock imagery. Now, I had you guys download the free stock plugin. So how I'm going to get to that is on the left-hand side, this little menu here. Under design at the very top, it says plugins with a little back arrow. I'm going to go back to all of my plugins. I'm kind of going out of the quick mockup and I'm trying to look for a new plugin. So that's this one, the free stock search. And this is looking at these free stock websites, Unsplash, Pixabay, and Pexels. It's also looking at Adobe stock, which is not free, but I just have that on as well. So you can go ahead and be able to change the settings for what works for you. So if you're looking for these, some free imagery here, what you can do is like, if I select this shape and I want to change it to a new image, I can just select that image and it's replacing it. Boom. Now you see that this is much better quality. It was so quick to do it. I didn't even have to leave the app to do it. And it's free for me. And it's actually like, it's copyright free. I can totally use this and feel at peace. But let's say you're trying to edit this section here, this imagery. Now, again, remember, you have to keep double tapping till you get into this particular layer. If you don't, something like this may happen. So I select this group. And then let's say I click apply selected files down here at the bottom. Suddenly, this is inside the button because this is the shape. So it's saying, oh, you want these images all in this group. Okay, we'll place them in there for you. I'm going to undo that. I just Command Z, undo, just the regular undo on your computer. And instead I'm going to that particular layer and then I'm selecting. Tap, tap, getting into that layer, tap, tap, getting into that layer. Okay. That's again, it's just another thing because that's a point of frustration for people. If they're like, wait, why is this happening to me? Just make sure that that blue highlight is where it needs to be. Next thing, kind of around that same idea is icons. Now for icons, I can, if I want to change this icon out, first of all, the plugin, the Quick Mockups plugin offers all these different icons that you can replace it with. All I need to do is go back to that plugin. Right now, I'm in free stock search. I need to get out of this plugin. So I'm going to go use the back button to get out. And then I'm going to go back to Quick Mockup. Now I'm back in this plugin area. So this part also might be confusing to you when you first are getting into XD, is realizing, okay, there is an XD tool where I can make all of my shapes and create my design, etc. And then I have these plugins to include more capability, adding in images, doing these UI kits, right? These quick mockup kits. So you have to think of them a little bit separately from another. So you have to go to the right place to do what you need to do, the right capabilities. Because when I want to change out this icon, I need to get into that particular layer to change it. So what do? Double tap. So double tap to get into there. Double tap again. Still not selected. Guess why? This is a shape. It has a blue outline, but then I need a double tap to actually get into this particular icon. Now you see this blue shape is just around the icon, not around the circle. So that might be something that can frustrate people too. They thought this whole thing is an icon. It's not. That is a circular shape. This is the icon. Okay. So once I've selected that icon, you're going to see on the left-hand side, if I'm in Quick Mockup into that plugin, all these different icons I can replace it with. This little bell or this little bookmark, what have you. You can also search for a particular icon. In here, I'm searching cart, and I see this little cart and I'm replacing it. So you can really adjust this again to make more sense for you and your design and your iconography needs. Okay, so we talked about pictures with the other plugin. Now we talked about iconography in the current Quick Mockup plugin. And now I want to talk about colors. This is going to be one of the biggest differentiators. If you're like, I don't want to use these colors, I want something else, again, so that it can start to really feel like my own. You can then take a color and you can first see what the other options are in the template. How am I going to do that? Well, I need to make sure that I'm still in the Quick Mockup plugin over here. And then I go into here and I can see style. So it says style. I have a main style, which is and then I have a primary style, which you saw turned it to green. So you can be like, okay, those are some options here. And also for those of you who are a little more advanced, there's states as well. If you're a developer and you know, okay, I need a hover state, I need a disabled state, etc., they have those in here as well. Okay. But let's say you're like, I don't want green or that yellowy color. That's not the style I want to go for. This is when you're going to now use the property inspector. So if you remember in the tour, that anytime you need to make any adjustments to your designs, it's going to be in the property inspector, unless you are using this plugin, right? Unless you're trying to see a capability within the plugin. Otherwise, you can always make changes in the property inspector. So if you're ever confused, sorry, I needed a water break. So if you're ever confused about where to go, just know that you can always just make changes here in your property inspector. That's all that really matters. This kind of overrides everything else. Don't worry about double clicking and getting into your plugin and making those changes right now. You can always feel free to just make any design adjustments over here in the property inspector. And that's the typical XD capability, like for design. So, all right, let's talk about this now. So I double click to get into this button, but I did not get into that shape yet. I'm only in this button. How I know that is over here in the appearance, I don't see that green color here. So I'm going to double click again. Now I see on the right-hand side, my property inspector has this green fill. Again, when in doubt, when you're feeling like you're making changes and it's not being reflected, just do another double click. Are you in the right layer? I'm going to add another little point of advanced stuff for you is if you remember the layers panel on the left-hand side, above your plugins, above the little binoculars on the bottom left-hand corner, right above it is your layers panel. And you can actually access any layer from here. If you don't want to do double click, you can also just find it in here in your layers panel. Again, you don't have to remember everything I'm saying. Just try a double click. If you remember layers panel, remember that. No worries if not. Okay, those are just a couple options to get you to the same place. So I double clicked, I'm in this area, layer, I see the green fill, and I want to change it. I'm going to change it to crazy mint green, let's say. Right, so you have that mint green and you're like, cool, that looks great, that's what I want. And then that's the color you want to use. Well, and this is again, I'm giving you another, just one more advanced option here. This is going to be my last, like, more advanced idea for you guys. Is if I want to change this color across all of my screens, this exact color, I found out I like this green. I can start to use my assets panel so that if I make the change to that color in one place, it's going to reflect across all of my artboards. This is to avoid doing this. I find this little color, I liked it, right? And I go here, and then I go back into this fill and I change out this color, and I have to go in here, and then I gotta change out in here, and on and on and on and on across all my designs. That's gonna take a while, right? So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go into my assets panel. So that's the final thing down here that we haven't really gone into yet. So we talked about the plugins, the binoculars on the bottom. We talked about the layers panel right up top. And then right above that is your colors, and this is your assets panel. Again, this is more advanced. If you do the other way, if you go select green for each one, that is totally okay. That's what I first did when I was a beginner. I didn't care about any of these advanced stuff. But if you're someone who's like, I really love to think about quickness and time, which that's what today's session is about, this is the way to do it. So you can make a little note for yourself if this is something you want to do. I'm going to take this color, I'm double clicking, getting into this color here, and I'm adding it to my colors panel by just clicking this little plus button right here. Now, if I right click and I edit it, and I want to change this color to a mint green, now you're seeing it reflect across my whole artboard, right? I'm seeing that mint green everywhere. And then other ones you need to make some adjustments for, you want to change the green, everything else, etc. You can do it just like that. You need to add it to your colors in your assets panel just by clicking that little plus button next to colors, and then right clicking it and editing it. Okay, that was advanced, big stuff, lots for you there. All right, so now we feel good about our designs. We can manipulate you can change out the copy, you can change out the fonts. Again, you just double click over here on the right-hand side, you can change out the fonts, you can change the sizing of them, the weight of them, etc. So again, if you're confused where to go, just look in your right-hand side after selecting a layer. That if you're making notes, put that in your most important notes. Select a layer and you'll find it on the right-hand side, ways to adjust it. Let's move on to prototyping. Woo! So we feel good about our designs. We're ready to prototype. All we need to go is into prototype mode. So if you remember from the tour, it was over here on the top left-hand corner, next to design is prototype. Now we're in prototype mode. It doesn't look all that different initially, like what? So you may get confused sometimes initially, like, am I in design or am I in prototype mode? Where am I? So just make sure you can see right up here in the top left corner. So the first thing I want to do is I want it so that when I click contact, it's going to go to this contact screen. So how I do that is I I'm literally just going to go to that layer. When I click this layer, I want it to go there. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to double tap to get into that layer. Once this layer is highlighted, and I can tell because it has this little blue square above it, and it has this little arrow on the side. And it's like, where do you want me to go? Where do you want this little arrow to go? So what I would do is I'm going to kind of first like zoom out a bit, and then I'm going to take that little arrow and I'm going to drag it over to this artboard. Now maybe you can see that there's a blue highlight when I'm selecting this artboard, saying, do you want me to go here or here or here or here? That little blue highlight will tell you. Just going to let go. And then now I'm going to make some adjustments. And how I'm going to do that is, again, on the right-hand side menu. So the trigger I'm going to leave as tap. So when someone taps it, they're going to go here. The action type is just going to be left at transition. Okay, the other ones you're not going to really have to worry about so much. They're a little more advanced. This is the most common one to use. And then I'm going to have the animation left out as none. Okay, so I didn't have to make any adjustments. Let it do the same thing for this screen. When I click this button, double tap, so this is selected, okay, and drag it over here. Okay, now let's see this in action. So I'm going to select this artboard. Again, if you remember how to select an artboard, you're going to go to that corner and just select the title of the artboard. That's how I know it's selected. And then I'm going to go over here on the right corner where there's a little play button. And when I hover over it, it says desktop preview. Select, play that. Now, when I click contact, it takes me to that page. But now I need to go back. When I exit out of this, I want it to go back to that screen, right? Let's see if it works here. I'm going to play this. Okay, so this is another thing that I've seen can frustrate people. I just tried to play this one, and you see that it's the whole screen. What the heck? Why is this one so small and tiny, and this one was so large? Such a different experience. This is called the viewport height. Now, this is, again, a common thing that can happen, especially when you're using a UI kit like this. It might have a different viewport height from one artboard to the next. You need to adjust it. Put this as another side note for you guys. You're going to go back into design. You're going to have artboard selected. You're going to go to the right-hand side in your little menu. Everything's there. And it says scrolling, and then it says viewport height 768. Then when I select this artboard, it says viewport height 4221. Viewport height is the height of what a user is going to see in their desktop screen before they start scrolling. So they're going to see it so much longer. It doesn't make sense. So I need to change this to 768. Okay, now I'm going to go back into prototype mode. And this happens every once in a while. So just keep note of it. And again, if you get ever confused, just Google it. Okay, so it's a simple Google. And there's a lot of answers there for this kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to select this artboard. I'm going to again press play in the upper right-hand corner. Going to go to contact. Yep. Oh, yeah. So then I wanted to go back to this screen now and select play. Now this works like I want it to. When I click this button, it goes into here. Great. Now I want it to go, when I click about, I want it to go to this screen. So I'm going to double click to get into that particular layer. I see that it's highlighted. It has this little arrow, and I'm just going to drag that little arrow over to this screen now, right? This is the one I want it to go to. Now, on the right-hand side, I don't even need to check my settings, because what XD does is it just remembers the last settings that you put in there. So whatever you last put in as the settings, that's how it's going to remain. So I don't even, for right now, I don't even need to look here or adjust anything. I know that that's what I want. So now I'm going to click play. Now I'm going to go to the about screen. Cool. Now here's where we're going to have a more challenging prototyping thing here happen. So when I clicked contact, if you remember from the home page, it went to this contact screen. Well, I went to the about page, I use this, it's also going to this contact screen. So what does that mean? Well, when I go into about and I click this contact screen, well, if I exit out, which screen is it gonna go to? If I just select this particular layer and I try to have it go back, well, which one? Because they're both using this same screen. They're both pointing here. Right, so what I need to do is I need to select this layer, and instead of dragging this wireframe anywhere, I'm going to double click it. This is this is another more advanced thing for prototyping, okay? Double click it. That means it's not going anywhere. This wireframe is not going. So when it's not going anywhere, double click. From there, I'm going to change my action type. So trigger is going to stay tap, but my transition type is now going to be previous artboard. What does that mean? No matter wherever this came, whoever the user, wherever they came from, it doesn't matter. Just bring them back to the previous artboard. Doesn't need to go anywhere else but the previous artboard. So let's see how that works. I go into classic, into the home page, and it goes back to this home page. If I go to the about page, I click it, and then I exit, it's going back to the about page. Okay, so that's just the only two types I'm going to share with you today that are pretty common, is the regular transition and the previous artboard. Now you can play around later down the road when you have time, is if I want to change and adjust this wire, you can play around with animations, with overlays, these other options, and have fun with it once you start to feel really comfortable with what I just shared today. Last thing I want to share about this is if you want to delete that, you don't like that wire, you see that it's grayed out. It's no longer blue and highlighted. I just need to select that wire anywhere, and then I could delete it to remove it. Okay, you can also just take it and drag it off, and it will also do the same thing. So either which way, you're just kind of removing that wire, selecting it, removing it. Okay, last thing I'm talking about today is collaboration. So one of the things that you can think about is working with other designers or developers on the same file. And the way that you can do that is actually adding them over here on the right-hand side next to the play button that we were just using to play our prototypes. There's a little mobile button, and then next to that is a little person with a plus button. It says invite to document. You can add that. And then you can add a person, their Adobe email address. So once you've signed up for Adobe XD with that email, that's your Adobe email, that's how you're going to add someone. So, hey, share with me your Adobe email, I'll invite you to the file. So you can invite them in. If you want to design with this person in real time, meaning you're both in the same file, maybe you're like talking to each other through video and you're saying, hey, what do you think of this? And you're trying to work on the same artboard at the same time, blah, blah, blah. You're going to actually have to go and enable co-editing. Enable co-editing right here. This means you're both designing in real time in the same file. Now I'm going to say a couple things about this. First, it's in beta, meaning it still has some bugs. It's not perfected yet, so it can be a little wonky. So if you really need it, try it out and have fun with it. If it doesn't work, it's a little wonky for you, maybe you don't, but try it out if that's something that you really need with a team. Okay. Secondly is make sure that you both have the same update in Adobe XD. So you are both on the same, you both updated to the same update, basically, right? So one of the ways you can do that, you just have to make sure you just go into your Creative Cloud and you can, it'll say update when you need to update it. So I say it's up to date. So you can, if you've just downloaded it, it's going to be fine. You're not going to need to do any updates, but just make sure you're both on that same version, okay? Then the other thing about collaboration is wanting to share this with other users, other developers. And the way to do that is you're going to go into share mode. Now, this is one of the common things that people do, and they go into share mode and they go, oh my gosh, what is happening? Why can't I select this? I can't select my artboards. It's not, what's going on here? Before you go into share mode, back into prototype mode, you need to select the artboard that is your home artboard, the first artboard that someone is going to see, the first screen someone's going to see when they start your website or your app. And you're going to select this little icon with a little home button on it right here and enable it. From there, you can actually, where it says flow 1, you can double click and you can label it. You know, this is my e-commerce page or something, e-com, whatever. So with that selected, this is now, all of these are enabled. Now, when I go into share mode, that is the only one that is enabled. So I can actually go to different flows or different parts of my experience, depending on what I select there. Okay. Then from there, you can create your links. How do you do it? In the right-hand menu. So easy to remember. Okay. So over here in the right-hand menu, there's a couple options for the ways that you can share it with someone. So you can, we're going to talk about design reviews and development, but I just want you to know there's also an option to do for user testing. You can create a link, share it with users, and that's how you can do testing on it. But I'm going to focus right now here on the development. So I'm going to create a development link. This is when I want to share my design with developers so that they don't actually have to go into my design file to start working on it. They don't have to be in this XD file. I can share them this link that's going to actually be much more beneficial for developers. So I'm going to create this link. And like I said, there are the ways to, you can use development as well as the design review. This is a little kind of a interesting thing. When I create a development link, and you're going to see it right here, and I can just copy that, this little link option, copy it, paste it into a browser. And when I open it, it actually opens up more into a design review link, because over here on the right-hand side, you can comment, make changes, and you can click into the prototype and everything like that. So I can go to my about, etc. And I can actually make notes. Hey, Tom, what do you think? Whatever it is. And you can submit that and they can reply to your design. You can have some notes and design feedback. But right underneath that is the developers link. So that can be a little confusing. You made a developer link and you paste it into your browser, but you didn't see the development style yet. So just note that that's where it is over here on the right-hand side, something you're going to need to share with developers. And here is where they can see all of the specs. So they can see, okay, this is 60 pixels to the left. They can see all that. They can get into some of the CSS as well. They can download images. They can look at hex codes. They can copy text. Everything that they need to do is right here in this link. Okay, that is everything. We talked about design, prototyping, and sharing all in XD in this one tool. I know I threw a lot at you, but that's why this is recorded for you guys to use and to look through later down when you're actually downloading and playing around with it. There's some things that are a little more advanced, but I had some call outs for things to really try to bring you back, just center you back, right? So don't ever feel overwhelmed. There's always Google to search as well, find the answers to, and also tons of video content as well. And I'm going to put a link, it's called letsxd.com, that has a lot of tutorials as well to help you out. All right. So thank you guys so much for being present and working through this with me. I'm so happy that I got to connect with you guys on Sunday. And please, yeah, let us know how this was for you. If you have any feedback, we're so happy to take that in and consider that for future sessions. All right, guys.